This microphone cord is so long. Like, once it's been useful that it was this long, but usually it just gets really, really tangled. In Genki 1, we learned about te iru or teru verb endings, and this means is doing the verb. So for an example, pang o kau means to buy bread. Pang o katte iru means is buying bread. So what is te aru? So even though aru is a present tense verb, and it's a verb that we've covered a while ago, to exist or to be, what it actually does to the verb is it kind of makes the verb into something that has been done in the past and still remains. So back to pang o kau, I buy bread. Pang o katteiru, I am buying bread, like currently I am in the action, I am in the pursuit, I am buying bread. Pang ga katte aru means bread has been bought. Bread was bought in the past, and it still remains now in the state of having been bought. Like my husband bought the bread, and it's sitting on top of the refrigerator, and it has yet to be used. Pan ga katte aru. So note that, like, conversationally, if like I came home from work and my husband wanted to inform me, hey, I bought bread, and it's ready for you to use, he wouldn't necessarily say like pan ga katte aru. That would be more like if someone else had done it. He would usually say like pan katte oita yo, like, oh, I bought the bread and I did this in advance of you needing it. This te aru is a little bit more literary, and it's also a little more like we're not really designated who did this verb necessarily, but that it has been done. It's kind of like passive voice. And note that to construct a sentence with a te aru verb, instead of using particle wo, you use particle ga. So you don't say pang wo katte aru. That just makes no sense grammatically, because we're kind of describing a state of being that the bread is in. You would say pang ga aru. Just cut out the katte part. You would say pang ga aru. There is bread. Bread exists. Pang ga katte aru means bread exists, it has been bought, but that's why it's particle ga instead of o, because you're describing a state of being that the bread is in. So here's a little hint about te aru. You will most often find it with these verbs. Kaku, to write, oku, to set down, and tsukeru, to attach or to turn on something. So kaite arimasu, it has been written down. Oite arimasu, it has been set down, and tsukete arimasu, it has been attached. And I say this because when I was scouring the net for like examples of sentences that use te aru verbs, these are pretty much like all the verbs that came up. And when I also like scoured my own mind palace and looked back and like all the Japanese that I know, like that's pretty much the only examples I could think of also in instances in which I would use te aru with verbs. So those verbs for the most part, especially oite aru. You may remember from my video I did on my main channel many months ago what it feels like to translate Japanese. I'll put a card up by my face. One of my sample sentences in there was テーブルの上に結婚式用のフラワーアレンジメントが置いてあります。Instead of saying like 置いてる, like it is on the table. 置いてある means like it has been set on the table and it's still, this wedding flower arrangement is still on the table. Somebody put it there and it's still there. It's just a passive way of saying that somebody did it. I'm not even mentioning that somebody did it, but it's implied. Well, 置いてあります. It has been set there and it's still there, and somebody must have put it there. It didn't just poof onto the table. It's not a magic flower arrangement. And here's some more sentences with te aru verbs. 本に書いてあったよ. I've seen this come up a few times. So 本に書いた means it was written in a book. 本に書いてあった means like it was written in a book and it's still there and I saw it. Yo. So I read that in a book once. And notice that this was like atta, te atta, not te aru. So you can do like the past tense also, and it still works in this case. Here's a sentence I was talking about a little bit earlier from that other video I did with a slightly different noun. テーブルの上に結婚式用の花が置いてあります. So there's a wedding flower arrangement on the table. Someone put it there and it's still there. グレーエンブレムは縫い付けてあります. We've never used, I don't think we've ever used the verb nu in any of these videos yet. So it's to sew. 縫います. 縫い付けて. So 縫い付ける is to attach on by sewing, basically, because 付ける is to attach. Nuitsukeru, it's what I call a super verb, if you remember from many, many lessons ago. It's basically just a verb with an auxiliary verb smashed together. So affixed on by thread and needle. Arimasu. So the gray emblem is sewn on, as in somebody sewed it on and it's still on there. ネットの情報や本に書いてある通りの時期に芽が出てこないと不安になってしまう. Long sentence. Okay, so let's separate it into its parts. The last part of the sentence, 不安になってしまう. 不安になる is to become anxious, to become uneasy, to become worried. The てしまうending of naru, to become, means like I become, and it's unfortunate that I become, or I become completely. So 不安になってしまう means like I become anxious and it's a bad thing that I'm becoming anxious. I mean, of course that's a bad thing. I don't know when it's ever a good thing if you become fuan, if you become anxious. So you're becoming anxious about something. What are you becoming anxious about? ネットの情報, so information on the internet. Ya, so remember this ya is like, it's a little different from particle to. Particle to is just and. Particle ya is like and this and something else that I'm not mentioning, etc., etc. So ネットの情報やlike the internet information and hon, books, ni, 書いてある通り. So 書いてある通り, the way, just exactly the way, 通り, it is written, 書いてある, in books, hon ni. So just the way it is written in books or internet news, no jiki ni. So in the season, jiki, exactly the way it is written in books or the internet, etc. 芽が出てこないと, so 芽が出る means buds coming out. 芽が出てこない means buds not coming out, basically. と, so in this case, this particle to is whenever, or when it is the case that buds don't come out in the season which it is written in books and internet news, 不安になってしまう. I become anxious. So, I get worried if my plants don't bud when books and the internet say they should. Now, here's the elephant in the room. Do you really need to use te aru? No. So let me rewrite those sentences without te arimasu. どっかで読んだことがあるよ. I read it somewhere. テーブルの上に結婚式用の花があります. I mean, 置いてあります is a little more elegant and a little more like what actually happened. Like, if there is a wedding flower arrangement on the table, like, somebody must have put it there, but does it really matter that somebody put it there? Like, there is a wedding flower arrangement on the table. Obviously somebody put it there, so why do we have to imply that somebody put it there? You know what I mean? 縫ったグレーエンブレムがあります. There is a gray emblem that was sewn on. Like, that works as well. 縫い付けてあるis a little more eloquent and it's a little more accurate of what we're describing. It has been sewn on, but you don't have to actually phrase it that way. You can totally get by without saying 縫い付けてある. ネットの情報や本に書いた通りの時期に芽が出てこないと不安になってしまう. 書いた通り. You don't even have to say 書いてある通り. The way it has been written or the way somebody wrote it down in a book for later. You can just say was written in a book. 書いた通り. So my point in bringing this to your attention that you don't necessarily need te aru is that you'll see it come up a lot in written Japanese, but you don't necessarily need to use it yourself. So this is one of these grammar rules that don't worry too much about you being able to use this. Just be aware that it exists, and then when you see it, know that this is what it means. For timestamps to the sample sentences in this video, check the pinned comment at the top of the comment section or the video description. Also check other links that I have in my video description to other great places to learn Japanese. And thank you to the patrons who support this and the other series on this channel. You can support me on Patreon for as little as $1 or $2 a month and receive supplemental study guides and such. And be sure to tune in next week and we'll cover what it means when you add suru to an adjective. 頑張ってね!